Remembered Promise Part 1. The distress signal came through at 3 in the morning, ship time. Commander Laura Mitchell was already awake, sitting in her small office with a cup of cold coffee, when the communication officer called her to the bridge. She had learned long ago that space never slept, and neither could she. The human exploration vessel Starbound Hope had been mapping the outer edges of the sector for 6 months. It was quiet work mostly. They scanned planets, collected samples, and sent reports back to Earth. Nothing exciting ever happened this far from the main trade routes. Until now. Laura stood at the main display and watched the signal repeat itself. It was old technology, the kind that civilizations used before they discovered faster methods of communication. Someone was calling for help using equipment that should have been in a museum. "Where is it coming from?" she asked. Her navigation officer, a young man named Cole, pointed to a small planet on the edge of their map. "Prime, it's the of the Empire." Laura knew about the. Everyone did. They were one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy, and species that had been traveling between stars when humans were still learning to make fire. They were proud, powerful, and they did not think much of younger races like humanity. Why would they use such old technology to send a distress signal? Laura wondered out loud. No one had an answer. She made the decision quickly. They would investigate. It was what explorers did. The Starbound Hope changed course and began its journey to Prime. The trip took 2 days. During that time, Laura gathered her senior officers and discussed what they might find. Daniel Hayes, the ship's chief engineer, suggested that the signal might be coming from a crashed vessel. Who handled propulsion systems, thought it might be a trap, believed it was simply a malfunction in some ancient equipment. None of them were prepared for what they actually found. Prime was a beautiful world. It had purple forests and silver oceans and mountains that touched the clouds. The signal led them to a valley far from any city, a place that looked like it had been burned by fire long ago. The trees were black and twisted. The ground was covered in ash. And in the center of the valley lay a starship. It was enormous. Laura had seen many ships in her career, but nothing like this. The vessel was made of crystal and metal woven together in patterns that seemed impossible. Even broken and half buried in the dirt, it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "That's not just any ship," Daniel said quietly. He was standing next to Laura, his eyes wide with amazement. "Look at the design. Look at the way the hull curves. That's royal architecture. I've seen pictures in old databases. This ship is at least 1,000 years old." They landed the Starbound Hope at a safe distance and prepared to investigate on foot. Laura led the team herself, with Daniel, and at her side. They walked across the burned valley toward the fallen giant. Before they reached it, they were stopped. A group of soldiers appeared from behind the wreckage. They were tall, their bodies covered in hard shells that gleamed like polished armor. Their eyes were large and dark, and they carried weapons that hummed with energy. Laura raised her hands to show she meant no harm. "We received a distress signal," she said. "We came to help." The soldiers did not respond. They simply stood and watched. Then another figure appeared. She was different from the soldiers. She moved with grace and authority, and the others stepped aside to let her pass. Her shell was decorated with gold and precious stones. A crown of crystal sat upon her head. This was Queen of the. Laura had never met royalty before. She bowed her head respectfully and waited. The Queen studied the humans for a long moment. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was deep and musical. "You are the ones who answered the signal." "Yes, Your Majesty," Laura replied. "We are explorers from Earth. We heard someone calling for help." The Queen turned to look at the crashed ship behind her. Something in her expression changed. For just a moment she looked sad. "This vessel is called the Throne of Eternity. It belonged to my grandmother. It was her coronation ship, the symbol of our dynasty. It crashed here during a great war 800 years ago." Daniel stepped forward without thinking. He could not help himself. The engineer in him needed to understand. 800 years, and no one has been able to repair it. The queen looked at him. Her dark eyes seemed to pierce right through him. Many have tried. Our finest engineers have studied this ship for generations, but the technology is too old. We have forgotten how our ancestors built it. Every attempt to restore it has failed. Daniel walked closer to the wreckage. He ran his hand along the crystal hull. It was cold, but he could feel something beneath the surface. A faint vibration, a whisper of power. "It's not dead," he said. "The ship is sleeping." The queen made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You are bold, little human. Do you truly believe you can succeed where the greatest minds of my empire have failed?" Daniel turned to face her. He was not a brave man. He was not a soldier or a hero. He was just an engineer who liked to fix things. But something about this ship called to him. Something about its beauty and its sadness made him want to help. "I would like to try," he said, "if you will allow me." Laura wanted to stop him. She wanted to remind him that this was not their mission, that they had no business getting involved in affairs. But she saw the look on his face and stayed silent. The queen was quiet for a long time. The soldiers around her shifted nervously. No human had ever spoken to a queen this way. Finally, she nodded. "Very well, human engineer. You may try. But know this, if you fail, you will have wasted not only your time but my hope. And if you damage this sacred vessel in any way, there will be consequences." Daniel did not look away from her gaze. "I understand, Your Majesty. I make you a promise. I will restore this ship or I will die trying." The words hung in the air between them, a promise made, a challenge accepted. Laura watched the exchange and felt a strange sense of destiny settling over them all. She did not know it yet, but this moment would change everything. For Daniel, for all of humanity. The work was about to begin. Remembered Promise Part 2. The first week was the hardest. Daniel worked from sunrise to sunset, crawling through the ancient corridors of the throne of eternity, and worked beside him, but most of the time they did not speak. There was too much to understand. The ship was like nothing they had ever seen. Its walls were made of crystal that glowed with a soft inner light. Its floors were covered with patterns that looked like frozen rivers, and its systems were a strange mix of technology and something else, something almost alive. The engineers watched them from a distance. They did not offer help. They did not offer advice. They simply stood and observed, their dark eyes filled with doubt. Daniel could feel their judgment. They thought he would fail. They expected him to fail. He refused to prove them right. Every night, Daniel returned to the Starward Hope exhausted and covered in strange dust. He would eat a small meal, take a shower, and then spread his notes across the table in his quarters. He drew diagrams of the ship systems. He wrote down every observation, every guess, every question. Laura visited him one evening. She found him bent over a mess of papers, his eyes red from lack of sleep. "You need to rest," she said. "You're going to kill yourself at this rate." Daniel shook his head. "I can't rest, not yet. I'm starting to see it, Laura, the pattern, the way everything connects." She sat down across from him. "Tell me." He picked up one of his drawings. It showed a section of the ship's power system. They think their ancestors were more advanced than they are now. They think the old technology is beyond their understanding. But that's not true. Laura frowned. "What do you mean?" "The technology isn't more advanced. It's different. They evolved. Their science evolved. They started thinking in new ways and they forgot the old ways. It's like—" He paused, searching for the right words. "It's like if humans forgot how to make fire because we invented electric heaters. We wouldn't be smarter. We would just be different." Laura nodded slowly. "So you think you can understand the old technology because human engineering is different from modern engineering?" "Exactly." Daniel smiled for the first time in days. "We're not better than them, but we think differently. We solve problems in ways they don't expect, and sometimes that's exactly what you need. The second week went better. Daniel began to understand the ship's basic systems. He learned how power flowed through the crystal conduits. He discovered that the organic components, which the thought were dead, were actually dormant. They needed the right conditions to wake up. Made a breakthrough with the propulsion system. She found that the engines used a type of fuel that the no longer produced, but she was able to create a substitute using materials from the starward Hope. It was not perfect, but it would work. Mapped the ship's navigation matrix. It was damaged badly, but he believed it could be repaired if they replaced certain key components. He spent long hours studying star charts, trying to understand how the ancient navigators had thought. The engineers began to pay more attention. Some of them even asked questions. Daniel answered as best he could, always respectful, always patient. He knew that trust had to be earned. Queen visited the ship one evening. Daniel was alone in the central control room, studying the main console. He did not hear her enter. When he turned around and saw her standing there, he almost dropped his tools. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing his head, "I didn't know you were here." The Queen moved closer. She looked at the console, then at the notes Daniel had spread across the floor. "You have been working very hard, human. The ship deserves nothing less." She studied him with those deep, dark eyes. "Why do you care so much? This vessel means nothing to your people. It is not part of your history. Your ancestors did not build it." Daniel thought about the question. It was something he had asked himself many times. "My grandmother," he said finally. "She used to fix things. Old radios, broken machines, anything people threw away. She would spend hours making them work again." The Queen tilted her head. Was she an engineer? No, she was just a woman who believed that some things were worth saving. Daniel looked around at the ancient walls, the glowing crystals, the beautiful patterns. "She used to tell me that when you fix something, you're not just repairing a machine. You're keeping a piece of the past alive. You're making sure that the people who created it are not forgotten." Queen was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "My grandmother was a great queen. She united our people after a terrible war. This ship was her symbol of hope. When it fell, many believed that our greatest days were behind us." Daniel met her gaze. "Then let's prove them wrong." Something changed in the Queen's expression. The doubt that had been there since the beginning faded. In its place was something else. Respect, perhaps, or the beginning of trust. "Continue your work, Daniel Hayes," she said. "I will ensure that my engineers give you whatever assistance you require." She left without another word. Daniel stood alone in the control room, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He had made a promise. Now he had to keep it. The third week brought new challenges. The team discovered that the ship's central power core was badly damaged. It was made of a crystal called a rare mineral that they had not been able to grow for centuries. Without it, the ship could never fly again. Daniel stared at the fractured crystal for hours. It was beautiful even in its broken state, filled with colors that seemed to shift and dance. He could see tiny cracks running through it like frozen lightning. "We can bypass it," suggested. "Install a human power source. It won't be original, but it will work." Daniel shook his head. "No, that would destroy everything we're trying to do. This ship is sacred to them. If we replace its heart with something foreign, it won't be the same. It won't mean the same thing." Looked worried. "Then what do? We can't grow a new crystal. We don't have the technology. Even the don't have the technology." Daniel placed his hand on the fractured. It was cold, but beneath the surface, he felt that familiar vibration, that whisper of sleeping power. "We don't need to grow a new one," he said quietly. "We need to wake this one up." The others stared at him. They did not understand. But Daniel had spent 3 weeks learning how the ancient had thought. He had studied their designs, their patterns, their philosophy, and he was beginning to see what they had seen. It was not dead, it was waiting. All they had to do was find the right way to call it back. Remembered Promise Part 3. Daniel spent 4 days studying He barely slept. He barely ate. He sat in the cold chamber where the crystal rested, watching the light shift inside it, listening for something he could not name. Thought he was losing his mind. She said so one morning when she brought him food that he did not touch. Daniel, this is crazy. You can't just stare at a rock and expect it to come back to life. It's not a rock, Daniel replied without looking away from the crystal. It's more like a sleeping heart. They grew these crystals over centuries. They fed them energy. They taught them to resonate with living beings. The crystal remembers what it was, we just have to remind it. Joined them in the chamber. He had been running calculations on his portable computer for days. I might have something, he said. According to the ship's old records, they responded to specific sound frequencies. The ancient used to sing to their crystals. It sounds insane, but the science is real. Certain vibrations can affect the molecular structure of crystalline materials. Daniel finally turned away from the crystal. His eyes lit up with excitement. Sound, of course. They communicated through vibrations before they developed spoken language. Their entire culture is built on resonance. The crystal doesn't need power, it needs music. Looked between them. So we're going to sing to a crystal. Not exactly. Daniel stood up and began packing. His exhaustion seemed to vanish as ideas flowed through his mind. We need to generate the right frequency. The exact frequency that the crystal was tuned to when it was first grown. If we can match that frequency, we might be able to trigger a resonance cascade. The crystal will start vibrating on its own. It will generate power from the vibration itself. That's a big if, said. How do we know what frequency to use? Daniel pointed at the fracture lines running through Those cracks aren't random. They form a pattern. If we analyze the pattern, we can calculate the natural frequency of the crystal. It's like finding the right note to make a wine glass ring. Was already typing on his computer. I'll start the analysis. It might take a few hours. We don't have hours, Daniel said. We have a day, maybe 2. The crystal is fatting, I can feel it. If we don't wake it up soon, it really will die. The team worked faster than they had ever worked before. Analyzed the fracture patterns and calculated possible frequencies. Built a device using parts from the Starward Hope, a machine that could generate precise sound waves and project them into the crystal. Daniel coordinated everything, making decisions, solving problems, pushing everyone forward. Queen came to watch. She did not speak. She simply stood in the corner of the chamber and observed. By evening, they were ready. The frequency generator was positioned in front of The calculations were complete. Everything was in place. But there was a problem. The energy release could be massive, explained. If we get the frequency wrong, the crystal won't just fail to wake up. It will shatter completely. And when it shatters, it releases all of its stored energy at once. We're talking about an explosion that could destroy everything within a kilometer. Laura had joined them in the chamber. Her face was pale. That includes this ship and anyone inside it. We can operate the generator remotely, said. Set it up, leave the chamber and trigger it from a safe distance. Daniel shook his head. No, the generator needs to be adjusted in real time. The frequency has to be fine-tuned as the crystal responds. Someone needs to stay in the chamber and make adjustments. The room went silent. Everyone understood what he was saying. Laura stepped forward. Absolutely not. I'm ordering you to find another way. There is no other way. Daniel looked at his commander, his friend. I made a promise. I said I would restore this ship or die trying. I meant it. That was a figure of speech. No, it wasn't. Queen moved away from the wall. She had been so quiet that everyone had almost forgotten she was there. Human engineer, she said. You would risk your life for a ship that is not yours, for a people who are not your people. Daniel turned to face her. "The ship is beautiful, it matters to you and your people, and I made a promise. Where I come from, promises mean something." The queen studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Then I will honor your courage, whatever happens, proceed." Laura wanted to argue, but she could see that Daniel had made up his mind. She placed her hand on his shoulder. "Don't you dare die in there." "I'll do my best." The chamber was cleared, positioned the generator, gave Daniel a communicator so they could stay in contact. Then everyone left except Daniel. He stood alone with the crystal towered above him, dark and silent. The fractured lines looked like scars on an old warrior. "Okay," Daniel said to himself, "let's wake you up." He activated the generator. A low hum filled the chamber. The crystal did not respond. Daniel adjusted the frequency. The hum changed, becoming higher, clearer. Still nothing. He tried again, and again. Each time he changed the frequency slightly, searching for the right note. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing. Then he found it. The hum shifted, and suddenly the crystal began to glow. Faint at first, just a flicker of light deep inside. But the glow grew stronger. The started to vibrate. "It's working," his voice crackled through the communicator. "The energy readings are climbing, keep going." Daniel made tiny adjustments, keeping the frequency stable. The crystal sang. Its light filled the chamber, painting the walls with dancing colors. It was the most beautiful thing Daniel had ever seen. Then the cracks began to spread. New fracture lines appeared across the surface of the vibration became unstable. The light flickered wildly. "Daniel, get out of there," shouted through the communicator. "The crystal is going to break." But Daniel did not run. He watched the cracks spread and he understood something. The crystal was not dying. It was shedding its old skin. It was healing. He made one final adjustment to the frequency. The generator hummed at a perfect pitch. And the sang. The sound was unlike anything Daniel had ever heard. It was not music, not really. It was something older, something deeper. It was the voice of a sleeping giant waking from a long dream. The cracks on the crystal sealed themselves. The fractures vanished as if they had never existed. The blazed with light, pure and golden, filling the entire ship with its warmth. Daniel stood in the center of it all, tears streaming down his face. He had done it. He had kept his promise. The crystal was alive. When he finally emerged from the chamber, his team was waiting for him, hugged him so hard he could barely breathe, shook his hand with tears in his eyes. Laura just smiled, relief flooding her face. Queen approached him. Her expression was different now. The doubt was completely gone. In its place was wonder. "You have done what no one else could do," she said. "You have restored the heart of the throne of eternity." Daniel bowed his head. "The work is not finished yet, but the hardest part is over." The queen reached out and touched his shoulder. It was a gesture of deep respect among the. "My people will remember this day, Daniel Hayes, and we will remember you." Outside, the twin suns of Prime were setting. The valley that had been dark for 8 centuries was now filled with golden light, pouring from the windows of the ancient ship. The throne of eternity was waking up. Remembered Promise Part 4. The first sign of trouble came 3 days after the awakened. Daniel was in the engine room checking the propulsion systems when the lights flickered. A moment later, a low alarm began to sound. "What is that?" asked. Before Daniel could answer, a voice echoed through the ship. It was deep and ancient, speaking in a language he did not understand. But the tone was clear. It was a warning. His voice crackled through the communicator. "Daniel, we have a problem. The ship's internal security systems are activating. Automated defenses. I'm reading energy weapons powering up throughout the ship." Daniel felt his stomach drop. "Where are you?" "I'm on the bridge with Commander Mitchell and some of the engineers. We're locked in. Some kind of force field appeared in front of the door." "Stay here," Daniel said. "Try to get to the auxiliary controls and see if you can shut down the security systems from there." Nodded, but before she could move, a shimmering wall of energy appeared across the entrance to the engine room. She was trapped. Daniel was alone in the corridor. He ran. He did not know where he was going, but he knew he had to find the source of the problem. The ship was waking up, and it did not recognize the people inside it. As far as its ancient systems were concerned, they were intruders. The corridors that had been peaceful and beautiful were now dangerous. Panels slid open in the walls, revealing automated weapons that tracked his movement. Daniel ducked behind a column just as a beam of energy shot past his head. He kept moving, staying low, using the ship's architecture for cover. The ancient designers had built the throne of eternity to protect the royal bloodline. Its defenses were meant to stop assassins and invaders. They were now treating Daniel the same way. He reached the central control room, the same place where he had spoken with Queen weeks ago. The door was open. Daniel stepped inside and stopped. In the center of the room stood a figure made of light. She looked like a but taller, more elegant. Her form shimmered and shifted like a reflection on water. A crown of pure energy floated above her head. Her eyes were ancient, filled with centuries of memory. Daniel understood immediately. This was the ship's central intelligence, a holographic projection of the Queen who had first commissioned the vessel, the ghost of the past. "You are not," the Ghost Queen said. Her voice echoed from everywhere at once. "You are an intruder. You will be eliminated." "Wait," Daniel said, raising his hands. "Please wait. I'm not an enemy. I came here to help." The Ghost Queen tilted her head. The gesture was eerily similar to how Queen moved. "Help. You are an alien creature. Your species was crawling in the mud when this ship was built. What help could you possibly offer?" Daniel took a deep breath. He knew that his next words might be his last. "I restored I brought it back to life when everyone else had given up. I did it because your descendant asked for help, and I made her a promise." The Ghost Queen's eyes narrowed. "My descendant." "Queen, she is the current ruler of she brought me here. She asked me to save this ship." For a long moment the Ghost Queen was silent. The weapons in the walls remained powered, ready to fire. Daniel could feel his heart pounding in his chest. Then the Ghost Queen raised her hand. The air around Daniel shimmered, and he felt something touch his mind. It was not painful, but it was strange, like fingers flipping through the pages of a book. "I am reading your memories," the Ghost Queen said. "I will see the truth for myself." Daniel did not resist. He could not have resisted even if he wanted to. He felt his memories flowing out of him like water. His childhood, his grandmother and her old radios, his training as an engineer, his time on the Starward Hope. The moment he first saw the throne of eternity, his promise to Queen, the weeks of work, the sleepless nights, the moment the sang. The Ghost Queen saw it all. When it was over, Daniel fell to his knees, gasping for breath. The mental contact had drained him. He looked up at the Ghost Queen and waited for her judgment. Her expression had changed. The hostility was gone. In its place was something like curiosity, maybe even admiration. "You are small," she said slowly. "Your species is young, your technology is primitive, and yet what? And yet you succeeded where my own people failed." The Ghost Queen moved closer. Her form shifted, becoming less threatening. "You saw what they could not see. You understood what they had forgotten. You brought the heart of my ship back to life." Daniel managed to stand. His legs were shaking, but he forced himself to stay upright. "I just wanted to help, that's all. I made a promise." "A promise." The Ghost Queen repeated the word as if tasting it. "Such a small thing, and yet you risked your life for it. You faced my defenses without weapons. You stood before me without fear." "I was terrified," Daniel admitted. The Ghost Queen made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite the fear. You have courage, small one, more than many warriors I have known." She raised her hand again. This time the weapons in the walls powered down. The force fields throughout the ship vanished. The alarms stopped. "I accept you," the Ghost Queen said. "You and your companions, you are no longer intruders. You are guests, friends." Daniel let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. "Thank you." "Do not thank me. You have earned this through your actions, not your words." The Ghost Queen's form began to fade. "Complete your work, human engineer. Restore my ship. Let it fly again among the stars." "I will." "And remember this day. Remember that you stood before a queen of thee and spoke as an equal. Remember that you proved your worth not with weapons or power, but with dedication, sincerity, and heart." Her final words echoed through the chamber as she disappeared. "You are small, but you are not insignificant. Remember this, children of Earth. Remember this always." Daniel stood alone in the control room. His legs finally gave out and he sat down hard on the floor. He was exhausted. He was drained, but he was alive. A few minutes later, Laura and found him. They had been released from the bridge when the force fields went down, came running from the engine room shortly after. "What happened?" Laura demanded. "The whole ship went crazy and then it just stopped." Daniel looked up at his friends and smiled weakly. "I had a conversation with the ship's security system." "A conversation?" "The original queen who built this ship. Her mind was stored in the computer. She thought we were invaders. I had to convince her otherwise." Stared at him. "You convinced an ancient alien AI that we were friendly. How?" Daniel shrugged. "I told her the truth. I showed her my memories, and I think she liked what she saw." Sat down next to him. "You're insane, you know that, right?" "Probably." Daniel leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes. "But the ship trusts us now. We can finish the work." Laura looked around at the beautiful chamber, the glowing crystals, the ancient technology that was slowly coming back to life. She shook her head in amazement. "I don't know how you did it," she said, "but I'm glad you're on my team." Daniel smiled. He thought about the Ghost Queen's words, small but not insignificant. It was a good thing to remember. The work continued, but now the Throne of Eternity was helping them. Its systems responded to their commands. Its corridors welcomed them. The ship was ready to fly again. Remembered Promise Part 5. The day the Throne of Eternity rose from the valley was a day they would never forget. Thousands of them had gathered on the hills surrounding the ancient crash site. They came from every corner of the empire, traveling across the stars to witness what many believed was impossible. Daniel stood at the main control console, his hands resting lightly on the ancient interface, was at the propulsion station, monitored the navigation systems. Laura stood behind them all, watching with quiet pride. Queen was there too, standing in the center of the bridge. This had been her grandmother's place. Now, after 800 years, a queen would stand here again. "All systems are ready," Daniel reported. "The is stable, propulsion is online, navigation is calibrated, the Throne of Eternity is ready to fly." The queen nodded slowly. Her eyes were bright with emotion she could not hide. "Then let us rise." Daniel entered the command. The ship shuddered. For a moment nothing happened. Then slowly the ancient vessel began to lift. Outside, they watched in stunned silence as the Throne of Eternity emerged from the ground that had held it for centuries. Dirt and rock fell away from its crystal hull. The ship rose higher, its surface catching the light of the twin suns. Colors danced across the valley, painting everything in shades of gold and violet and blue. The ship climbed into the sky. Inside, Daniel felt the deck steady beneath his feet. The shuddering stopped. The Throne of Eternity was flying smooth and true, as if it had never been damaged at all. Let out a laugh of pure joy, wiped tears from his eyes. Laura simply smiled, her heart too full for words. Queen walked to the main window and looked out at her world below. Her people were cheering. She could not hear them through the hull, but she could see them waving, jumping, embracing each other. Many were crying. "You have done it," she said softly. "You have truly done it." Daniel stepped away from the console and stood beside her. "We did it together, your people and mine." The Queen turned to face him. "No, we watched, we doubted, we waited for you to fail, but you never did. You and your small team accomplished what generations of could not." She shook her head slowly. "I do not understand how." Daniel thought about the question. He thought about his grandmother, about her old radios and her patient hands. He thought about all the problems he had solved, all the machines he had fixed, all the times he had found a way when there seemed to be no way. "Humans are stubborn," he said finally. "We don't know when to quit. We see a problem and we just keep working at it until we find a solution. It's not intelligence. It's not special technology. It's just refusal to give up. That is a powerful trait. It's gotten us this far." The Queen smiled. It was the first time Daniel had seen her smile, and it changed her entire face. She looked younger, softer, less like a ruler and more like a person. "I will not forget what you have done here," she said. "Neither will my people." The throne of eternity orbited Prime for 3 days. During that time, Daniel and his team made final adjustments and ensured that everything was working perfectly. Engineers came aboard to learn the systems that their ancestors had forgotten. They treated the humans with respect and gratitude. On the 3rd day, Queen summoned Daniel to the throne room. It was a massive chamber at the heart of the ship, decorated with crystals and precious metals and artwork that was older than human civilization. A throne made of pure crystal stood at the far end. The Queen sat upon the throne for the first time. Her advisors and guards stood around her. Laura, and were there too, standing to the side as witnesses. Daniel walked down the long aisle toward the throne. His footsteps echoed in the vast space. He felt nervous, but he kept his head high. "Daniel Hayes of Earth," the Queen said, her voice carrying through the chamber. "You came to us as a stranger. Your people are young, your technology is simple, and yet you have done what no one else could do. You have restored the throne of eternity. You have given my people back a piece of their history. You have kept your promise." She stood from the throne and descended the steps. In her hands she held something small and glowing. A crystal, carved into a perfect star shape, pulsing with soft golden light. "This is an honor crystal," she explained. "It is cut from a fragment of the itself. Among my people it is the highest award we can give. It marks you as a friend of a hero of our empire. As long as you carry this crystal, you will be welcomed in any world. You will be protected by any citizen. You will be one of us." She held out the crystal. Daniel took it carefully. It was warm in his hand, and he could feel it vibrating gently, like a tiny heartbeat. "I am honored," he said. His voice was thick with emotion. "I don't know what to say." "You do not need to say anything. Your actions have spoken louder than any words." The Queen turned to address the room. "Let it be known throughout the empire. The humans are no longer a young race to be ignored. They are allies. They are friends. From this day forward, the empire extends its hand to the human coalition in peace and partnership." A cheer rose from the assembled. Daniel looked at his, was crying openly, was grinning so wide it looked like his face might split. Laura nodded at Daniel, her eyes shining with pride. They had done more than restore a ship. They had changed the relationship between two civilizations. Later that evening, Daniel stood alone at a window on the throne of eternity. The ship had settled into orbit, moving gracefully among the stars. Below, Prime glowed like a jewel. Laura found him there. She stood beside him and looked out at the stars. "How does it feel," she asked, "to be a hero?" Daniel shook his head. "I'm not a hero. I'm just an engineer who kept his word." "That's exactly what a hero would say." He smiled. "Maybe, but honestly, I'm just glad the ship is flying again. It deserves to be in the sky. It was built for it." Laura was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You know this is just the beginning, right? The alliance the Queen announced. It's going to change everything. For humanity, for the whole galaxy." "I know. Are you ready for that?" Daniel thought about the question. He thought about all the challenges that lay ahead. The negotiations, the cultural exchanges, the problems that would inevitably arise when two different civilizations tried to work together. But he also thought about the Ghost Queen's words, small but not insignificant. He thought about the singing back to life. He thought about the promise he had made and kept. "I think so," he said. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it the same way we faced this. One problem at a time, one step at a time, until we find a way." Laura nodded. "That sounds like a plan." They stood together in silence, watching the stars. The throne of eternity sailed on through the void, carrying the hopes of two peoples into the future. Behind them, the glowed in its chamber, its golden light filling the ancient ship with warmth. It had been sleeping for 800 years. Now it was awake again, thanks to a stubborn human who refused to give up. Daniel touched the honor crystal in his pocket. He thought about his grandmother and smiled. Some things were worth saving. Some promises were worth keeping. And sometimes, being small was exactly what you needed to be.